Hello and welcome back to the next chapter of our Book Eaters podcast. Not only the next chapter, but the last chapter of this season. And to close it out, we're revisiting something that we talked about in our prologue, where we had the idea that we would evaluate a book based off of the actual book, the audiobook, and the movie. So, against my better judgment, we've decided to call this chapter Triple Play.
Triple play, 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 play!
And I was only convinced because of the opportunity to hear Michelle do that sound effect. So in any case, when we decided that we were going to do this, we went through a couple of iterations. One, we were each going to take one platform and then discuss it. We decided that doing that, you wouldn't really be able to make a true comparison because, everybody's would have a different point of view and nothing else to compare it to. So then we decided that we were all going to read the book, listen to the book, and watch the movie. And first ideas we had for that was The Goldfinch, because it was a great book. That was overly ambitious.
I watched the movie, just so you guys know. I went to the theater. It wasn't even my normal theater. It was like visiting a guest church to see it.
Yeah.
And just so you know.
Yeah, she tried hard, but the book is very, very long. And the audiobook, I had read the book, and it took me probably 2 weeks to read the book, but I'd already read it, and then the audiobook I actually bought used, and when they came in the mail, it was literally as thick as a family Bible, if we're going to keep the religious thing. It was like 12 discs, and I was like,
Willikers, Batman.
It would have taken a very long time. So we scrapped Goldfinch and then just tried to find something that was a little bit more expedient. And in doing so, we came up with
Where'd You Go Bernadette?
Yes, written by
Maria Semple.
I remember actually seeing this book in the bookstore, but it caught my eye because I have an old high school friend named Bernadette. I hadn't seen her in a really long time. And I texted her a picture of the cover. Where'd you go, Bernadette? She did not respond, and I have never heard from her again. So I've completely lost touch with her, because then I broke my phone and I lost all my contacts. So now I don't even have her number. So Bernadette, if you're out there, you know who you are. I only have one Bernadette in my life.
Where did you go, Bernadette?
Where did you go, Bernadette?
Where did you go?
Yeah. All right, so one thing that we did decide to do, though, was we were going to kind of mix it up and do things in different order. I read the book first, listened to the audiobook, and then watched the movie. What'd you do, Iris?
I read the book first, listened to part of the audio, watched the movie, and then finished the audio after.
Oh, okay.
Mixing it up. I watched the movie first, as is my way, and then I listened to the audiobook, and then I read the actual book.
Okay. Now, and we all watched the movie together here at Iris's house.
We did.
And it was very, very difficult not to dive into a discussion right then, but we persevered, and now we will unleash it all. And as is our way, we crafted a cocktail inspired by the book. It gives a little bit away of the plot, but
just so you guys know, we're going to be talking about the book. So if you haven't read it and or seen the movie or listened to the audiobook, there may be spoilers ahead.
Right. So in the book, it is the cocktail that is mentioned is called the Pink Penguin. It's not a real cocktail, and the book doesn't really explain what the drink is, but it does say that it is the official drink of the scientists that are working in Antarctica. So I was trying to think, well, what kind of drink could that be? And a very popular cocktail back in the day was called a Pink Lady. Pink Lady is gin, applejack, and grenadine. And I could see that on a bar in the North Pole, applejack may not be a common ingredient. So I figured it probably didn't have that. And so they modified it in some way and said, oh, instead of a pink lady, it's a pink penguin, because here we are surrounded by penguins. Right. So this drink is going to be 1 part gin, 1 part cream for polar ice caps, right? And to put a little bit of the whiskey applejack kind of thing in it, I used bourbon cream, which of course they probably did not have in the Antarctic
So what's
bar.
The pink part?
And then the pink is grenadine, which is what a Pink Lady has. So the ingredients of a Pink Lady are all the same, except instead of applejack, it's a bourbon cream.
So what's it going to look like?
It's going to be pink.
Ooh, it is pink.
All right.
First taste.
Yum.
Cheers.
Oh, that's yummy.
Okay. It is.
I love that.
It's definitely a cream drink. So if you like those types of things like grasshoppers or White Russians.
It's warming too. It has like a White Russian, but like sort of like a little girl version of a White Russian.
Those wacky scientists.
I mean, they gotta figure it out.
All right, so let's explore the tundra that is Where'd You Go Bernadette. So let's start with the book. That is the first thing that I did was read the book. And I'll be frank, I was not too enamored with the book. So just for people who haven't read it, I did think it was interesting because the way the book is formatted is it's just a daughter, B, is reading basically a dossier of her mother's correspondence about her mother. And so 90% of the book are either emails or memos.
So like the narrative is B, and then it's B collected various faxes. Like what year was this?
Well, she didn't collect
faxes and emails and texts from all the other characters in the story, and I did not have a problem with it listening to it. I did not have a problem with it in the movie, but in the book itself, I thought this does not check out. There is no way someone writes this kind of dialogue in a fax. I'm sorry. If I'm writing a fax to someone, I'm not gonna like bother to write dialogue. He said, then she said.
Well, okay, so let's back
it was
up.
Like her way of making different perspectives, but still keeping it from B's perspective. But it was a cheat, and it was a dirty cheat, and I did not buy it in the book. It didn't bother me in the audio version for whatever reason, but in the book itself, it totally bothered me.
Okay. I think it was just emails.
No, they actually said the word fax. Fax from one character to another.
Right. Let's try to restrict this to just the book right now, though.
Well, I'm talking about the book.
We're going to compare and contrast them.
This is what I didn't like about the book. That was it. That's the only thing I didn't like about it.
Well, I liked the mechanic of it. I liked the story being told from different points of view, where you're really hearing the story about Bernadette, who, just quick plot summary, Bernadette Fox is an architect, a very gifted architect. She won grants and a Genius Award and is sort of this up-and-coming phenom of architecture. Something goes bad with one of her houses, and she is completely crushed. At the same time, her husband has the opportunity to work for Microsoft in Seattle. They currently lived in California. And so she uses that as an opportunity to escape from her failure and never really bounces back. And so the story is told from her, ostensibly from her daughter, who's the narrator of the book, sifting through all of these documents that have been collected. You're not exactly sure at the beginning where she came by the documents, but it's clear that something has happened to the mother, and the story is unfolding as she goes through these documents.
I think what she did is she organized the documents in the events that were happening that led up to what occurred. And what I enjoyed was that she used conversations between other people to start the story off. The only time when it goes off the conversations when it's actually something she's experiencing herself, to fill in the blanks between herself and her mother,
right,
or herself or whomever she's with. But other than that, when it comes to Bernadette herself, it's always based on someone else's perspective, someone else's words.
Well, there was a few that were her own emails, to like her former colleagues.
That's not what emails look like.
Well,
that's not what faxes look like. That's not how people communicate with one another. Well, it felt like she was trying to tell the story through the lens of someone, through this lens, but she wasn't true to it. She wasn't true to it. It didn't feel like that's what an email written would have looked like from those characters. And also, many of those characters had the same voice, which I was like, no, they're different characters.
You're getting into the audiobook. We're not there yet. I'm not.
When I say voice, I mean the voice of the written word. I'm talking about on the page. Like, if you write an email, it's going to sound different than if I write an email. But in this book, all of the emails, regardless of who they're written by, many times had the same voice. Like, they were coming from the same person. And it was difficult for me to be like, I mean, I knew who it was because I could see it, but I just felt like it was an interesting concept. It just wasn't done well.
Well, that's exactly what I wrote. I really liked the mechanism that she chose, but I don't think it was executed very well. Yeah. I could tell, in the book, some distinction between the characters, but I didn't feel like any of them were authentic. And that was probably the hardest bridge for me to really cross with this book, is that so much of it was implausible, but yet there wasn't any magical realism. It wasn't a fantasy book. So there was nothing to help you get over the fact that it wasn't making sense. It wasn't madcap and zany. It was supposed to be like a real story, and people just don't act like that. And a lot of it was just
people didn't act. Can you specifically state what is it that you
Well, I thought the Audrey character was way over the top. I don't think
I lived in California.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived in Orange County up in Mission Viejo, and Audrey is real.
No, I totally get that. I mean, but if it was meant to be a caricature, I would get it. But there's no, like, the whole thing with Audrey getting the blackberries removed. A suburban upper middle class person is not going to crawl through a hole in someone else's fence. They're going to be too worried about litigation.
Well, she wasn't, because she was protected because her husband was the DA.
Let's put it
so she was protected from litigation. Like, I don't think she was afraid of that.
I lived in a community in I shouldn't say the name of the community. I lived in a community, a private, very big private community up in the foothills by Mission Viejo. And you had people who were new with money. These are people they're not old money, meaning that they've had it, since birth. They just came with money all of a sudden. And you literally, I can sit there and watch other people, one woman specifically, go to another neighbor's house when she's not there, look through a window because she just renovated her home. She wanted to see what the renovation was. Oh. There was constant competition going on within that. I was so glad to leave. I really didn't know anyone in my name. I lived there for 2 years and I never got to know anybody because it was just the type. They were so into status, money.
So you related to the Nats and also to that weird guy who wanted to make Mercedes parent?
Yes, exactly.
You related to that.
That was so real. So realistic.
Actually, I thought the Ollie O character was the most believable. I mean, I thought that part was great. He was one of my favorite characters. Real-time news flash. So
the part that I didn't find unbelievable was on the ship, how they were able to sneak off and how she was able to convince herself. Like, that stuff did not seem legit. Maybe it's just because I'm a rule follower, but I'm like, you bitches should go to jail for that nonsense. Like, that's criminal activity that's happening right now. And then I'm just supposed to believe that somehow you miraculously got out of it.
Yeah, and then somehow the Russian mob was after her and cashed in all of her Sky. I mean, none of that seemed real. There was also things like, they're in the dossier, I'm calling it, of documents. One of the things that was between Audrey and Bernadette, because this is the part that we haven't said yet. Once Bernadette, her husband LG, who works for Microsoft, moves to Seattle, they have their daughter B. Bernadette never fits in, and their daughter is very gifted. Everyone loves her.
Crazy person.
But that's the basis of the story, is that she's becoming more and more. Bernadette's becoming more and more of a recluse, and the parents at the school are very resentful that she doesn't participate. She doesn't join in. She's not one of them. And
so there were a lot of, I want to say, just rants in the book against these people that came from many different perspectives, and I feel like the author, Maria, I think like she has those feelings, but I just don't agree with her a lot of the time. And I was just like, that's not funny. It's not funny at all. Like, what? Like the huge rants about Seattle and how it rains all the time, and about the homeless people, and about the parking, and about
I think the book was definitely written for you to be sympathetic toward Bernadette.
I didn't
but
like her
she
at all.
Was just as culpable, and I didn't like her either.
I thought she was a little bit racist.
She
if
was
I'm being
super
honest.
snobby as well. Like, I remember, I know you're asking for specifics. The one that stands out to me, and they did not put it in the movie, probably because it did cast her in such a bad light, was when they went out to eat Mexican, and the tattooed couple is at another table, and they don't know the difference between a burrito and an enchilada, and she can't focus on the conversation that her husband is trying to have with her because she's mocking them. Oh my God, I can't believe they don't know the difference between an enchilada and a burrito.
And then the tape. The tape tattoo.
Oh yeah, like and a paperclip. Oh my God, they're so
like she's just so mean.
Yeah, super mean.
I interject on this?
Yes,
a little bit.
Can.
So some of the characters I like to say is that they are pretty realistic, because living in California, I have not lived in Seattle, so I can't say that. I'm basing my perspective. I lived in northern, southern, and central California. Okay. So I've experienced the different cultures in California itself, and Southern California, especially by, or OC. Mm-hmm. You do have people with those type of personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like, when you say those, you mean Bernadette, or you mean?
No, the people that she experienced in Bernadette.
Okay.
They were not real. They created a facade, and they wanted to be more than what they were. Okay, truly, what these people wanted to be was more than what they were. And so I felt that the author was trying to make humor. She did exaggerate their personalities a bit, but I think it was to just bring some humor, some quirkiness.
So you're talking about the people who don't know the difference between enchilado and are you talking about the neighbor and the nuts?
The neighbors and the parents. Now coming back to that situation in the restaurant, at that point, I was disillusioned with Bernadette for a bit until the point where they go into her backstory. Okay, and then the one statement made by one of her peers saying that you would be a menace to society if you stopped creating. And I thought that was beautifully done, because at that point I really didn't like her until when he said that. Then I was able to reflect back on all the who she was and how she was behaving, and I realized that when you're sad and depressed and unhappy, ugliness comes out of you, and that was her ugliness.
Yeah, I mean, for
it
sure.
Doesn't excuse it, though.
But that doesn't mean that I have to like her. Like, I get that, and I'm not saying she should be put to death or imprisoned or anything.
But I don't want to be friends with her.
But you did see her transformation, though, at the end of the book. When she actually started creating, she was a different person. It's like she changed.
Right, but that just extremely selfish.
Selfish.
And like that poor bee
had to
raised herself. She was so parentified, and it was I mean, so I get where you're coming from. Like, once you understand someone, it's easier to like them, or it's easier to like give them grace because you understand them, and that's true. But I think that the difference is that the way you color people,
right, and the way that you're treating people, specifically your family, should not be at the whims of whether or not you're getting what you want in life. The way that you treat your loved ones should be constant.
All right, so a little perspective here, though. Like you said it at the movie, and you're saying it now after listening to it and reading it. You're saying that what was going on with her daughter.
Oh, the parentified?
Yes.
Yeah. Bee was a really smart kid, but all of that was self-driven. Like, I don't see Bernadette really even checking in to see if she did her homework.
Yeah, if anything, Bernadette held her back.
Bernadette, I mean, just the way that they lived, and like she didn't.
Okay, so then
they were doting because of the medical problems and stuff, and they made her go to the hospital, and there was all that doting that happened, but it was almost like, she even says it at the end of the book that she wanted to be her friend instead of her parent.
So
Bee doesn't need a friend. She needed a parent. Right. Well, I mean, I'm not a parent, so obviously all of these things that I'm saying are colored with a single.
Well, she agrees with you because she's a parent too. So
my parenting
to me,
is very limited.
To me, the key was, I mean, it's great if you raise an independent daughter. That's a wonderful thing. But when the child, and I would say I have perspective of this from myself as a parent, but also working in healthcare and seeing it.
I mean, that's what mine comes from the foster system.
When the child is more focused on the parent's mental well-being than the parent is focused on the child's mental well-being, that's where I have a problem.
Okay,
and so if your daughter is more concerned about how a stressor that, like the plumbing breaks or your car breaks down, if the child is more worried about how you're going to cope with that than you are worried about how your child is going to cope with that, that's a problem.
Yeah,
I can excuse a lot because of the miscarriages, and the house, while it was a tragedy, exacerbated that situation. Right. She made very poor decisions, and consequently bad shit happened.
Maybe there was some mental illness involved. Maybe there was depression that was undiagnosed, but she wouldn't get help. And her husband, for all of his faults, and I'm not a huge fan of his either, tried to get her to get help many times, and she rejected it every time.
And that's another thing. So that time period was medication was one of the biggest things. Taking drugs
it wasn't just about the drugs.
Oh, she did. She tried to talk to someone in the beginning.
I think one time she went to
she thinks she's better than everybody. She didn't respect the therapist. She thought that they were a hack and that she could treat herself better, and so she left. That's the problem that I have with her throughout the book. Mental health aside, she's just not a very kind or nice person.
She's just not. But as a society, we don't do a great job of managing mental health, and we should do better. And it would have been great if Bernadette had received the help that she needed, and she could have been there for Bee, but she didn't, and that didn't happen. And as a direct result, her kid basically managed her life, kept things, like.
So do you think
she protected her mother? Yeah.
She protected her mother from like things like going to youth group. Like she can't tell her mom she's hanging out with her friends at a youth group.
Right. Or didn't want to tell her mom about her choreographing the kindergartners recital because she knew her mom wouldn't be able to come and she didn't want to make her mom feel bad. And so she couldn't share enthusiasm about that because everything had to be filtered through what was best for Bernadette. Right. Nothing was filtered through what's best for B. It's what's best for Bernadette.
So then what fueled that passion by B? B, okay, because from what I saw is Bernadette loved B to death. I mean,
absolutely. No one is saying she doesn't love B. Or that B didn't love Bernadette. Just that
it was not a healthy relationship.
It was not a healthy relationship, and that I was hoping in the course of the book, which I did get in the book from the father, some reconciliation of that.
Right.
And a little bit with Bernadette where she said, I'm not going to be your friend anymore, now I'm going to be your mom at the end of the book. I did get a little of that, which I didn't feel in the other mediums. But I wanted that. I wanted someone to finally look out for me. Because she was the one that was telling the story. She was the one, even though the story was about Bernadette.
Who lost a great opportunity, by the way, when she not being able to go to the prep school that she got into. That opportunity. No, she couldn't go because they had to leave. She had that whole meltdown because
they kicked her out.
Yeah, they did.
Because she was so freaked out because her mom was missing.
She lost her shit. Well, I mean,
I don't think this is going to. I mean, whether or not she went. I mean, that's up to B whether she wanted to go to boarding school or not. I think
she was looking forward to it
she went to the boarding school,
and
then when she got there, she realized that the people that she was rooming with weren't cool, and she couldn't fit in.
Right, exactly.
And she didn't whatever.
I think that if she had started off on a better foot with a clearer mind and with more positive,
your mom had just disappeared, and you weren't going there in the middle of the school year. There are things that would. I mean, and I feel like the father initially,
your father
was looking out for her by saying, look, she can't start in the middle of the semester. I want her to have a normal life. Like he was trying, and then all of a sudden, all the shit went down. He was like, you know what? Let's just find a spot.
Send her.
Yeah. Because we can't manage it right now because Bernadette's missing. I don't know where she is.
I don't know. And to me, the father was never there. I mean, even the daughter. There. No, he was not there.
He was never there.
Yeah.
He was not a great, like I said, he was terrible. Right. I'm not a fan of his either. But toward the end, after Bernadette left and he went and picked her up from the school, he tried and was doing this, he was.
I understand, but he tried. I can respect what B was going through because you can't be all of a sudden a dad in the last minute. And I think the reason why she sided with Bernadette.
I mean, it's true, but
I was far more sympathetic toward LG than I was to Bernadette.
But he did step up. Is what I'm saying is that he didn't step up for a long time, and we don't like him because obviously he had an affair and took advantage of that poor girl.
Okay.
Whoa, no, he did not take advantage of her.
She's so nuts.
She manipulated him.
He knew the whole time what was happening. Let's not even pretend that he didn't understand.
Okay, so a thing about
she's
LG.
Also crazy though.
Yes. Definitely. About LG is that I think as a partner, and Bernadette loved him.
And he loved Bernadette.
He loved Bernadette, but the image he had of Bernadette he wanted to keep. So when he was so jealous, the fact that he at the end when he was when they were trying to commit her and he was there, he started talking about himself instead of why they were committing Bernadette. He actually was angry at the fact that she couldn't communicate with him what she felt deep, and he realized as a failure, as a partner to her.
He did, yeah.
He didn't understand what she was going through. He was so focused on his job that he didn't see where she was going at. So in turn, it affected Bernadette and the relationship. So there was like this dynamic that was going between the three. Bernadette tried as much as she could because she already had a handicap. You could tell based on the discussions with her peers, they respected her, but she had a way of viewing life that people couldn't understand. So I
would argue that LG had similar issues. I think he was on the spectrum for autism. The whole thing with needing to be barefoot, and he was a genius in his own right.
Right.
Yeah.
So the difference is that he didn't fall apart. And yes, he may have been a little bit, it's the classic difference between someone who allows their emotions to impact them to the extent that they can't function versus someone who continues to function because they don't allow themselves to really
But
feel.
LG had a support mechanism. He had someone who was at his back. That crazy.
Oh my God.
She was
admin.
She was there for a
But
second.
she was there for
No,
a second.
she was there. No, she was there
for
from the
17 years of their marriage. It was just him.
I understand, but he was not there for the 17 years of that marriage.
I
disagree.
So
then,
I mean, I think that he was there. I think that he wasn't there for B.
And he wasn't there for Bernadette either.
And I think
he ran away. He ran away with
he put all of his stress into his work.
So you can be sympathetic toward Bernadette, but you can't be sympathetic toward LG.
Well, because see, Bernadette didn't actually run away. Even with
she didn't actually run away. That's true. She tried to meet them.
Even though she had her
except
own,
for the fact that she completely disappeared and no one knew if she was.
Well,
alive.
she was about to be committed, but. Even though through the 17 years of B's life, even though she had a place,
15, right?
15 for the time that she tried to be there as a mother, even with her handicap, and LJ was away. He was never there.
He wasn't there.
And so that's where.
But I think that April is right. I think that LG just handled the nonsense differently than she did. Like, I think he thought the miscarriages were hard on him.
And what about all the money that she's spending without even thinking about it? Where's that money coming from?
So there was many times in the book I was like, it must be nice to be that wealthy, where you can just be we're going on 3 weeks.
See, that's another thing. That's where I think
send 3 of everything on this supply list.
I think that's where you have to see where the author was trying to tell you where Bernadette was mentally. I think that's where that was.
Well, not enough credit is given to the people that have to cope with that.
There was one more thing. So LG running away to his job, he was in a safe haven at Microsoft where he felt comfortable.
Right.
He left Bernadette in a place, one where she wasn't comfortable and surrounded by people who were not supported. She had no support mechanism except for B. B was her only support mechanism.
That was kind of on her, though.
Yeah, she just, and that's true. And because she felt, what was it that she gave the saint?
Her miracle, her miracle. Well, she said that she put all of her miracles into B.
Right, and that's what I felt, that she gave up everything. She gave up everything because she wanted B to live. That was her creation.
She used B as an excuse.
I think so too. I think that she said, this is all the best that I can do. That's all that I can do. And
I've done this, so this is all I'm going to do. I'm not going to try anymore.
She didn't try.
Okay, so we feel very differently about Bernadette.
I mean, obviously.
To bring it back and make sure for people who haven't read the book, obviously it's this family of 3. They live in this sort of dilapidated old children's home.
Yeah, it's like a school for girls.
Which originally Bernadette was supposed to fix up, but she never did. And it should really be condemned at that point. There's, vines and stuff growing through the floorboards.
Like the entire basement is covered in blackberry bushes.
There's rooms that they can't go in. Everything leaks. The floors are so rotted that when B as a child playing bakery, she can scrape up the rotted floorboard to use for a cake. And that's what the child is growing up in. But they become acclimated to that, and which I totally can relate to which
I think was part of the point of the book, because they talk about that several times, the idea that we get used to things.
Right.
That things at first are like, oh my God.
Right.
But then over time you get used to them and you're less and less and less and less, oh my God, about them.
Right. So instead of it being a fresh start for the family, it's sort of the beginning of the end for Bernadette, especially considering that she has several miscarriages, finally successfully has a child, but that child is born with a heart defect and goes through multiple surgeries. They didn't think that she was going to live. And then she becomes sort of fixated on the health of her child. Although by the time the child is 6, she's basically 100%. She has some asthma every now and then, but otherwise feels great and lives a very active and happy life. But Bernadette still, that's her only function in life, is to be B's mother, and with questionable results with that. Then everything's coming to a head in the book because Bernadette and LG had promised the child that they would take her to the North Pole, Antarctica. If she did well in school, she had a great year and made it into a super exclusive boarding school.
Right.
And so they're all supposed to go away for 3 weeks on this cruise to Antarctica. That sort of sets off. So Bernadette is not equipped to handle her life. She's handed over all of her adulting to a virtual assistant.
In India, she pays 25 cents an hour or something
yeah,
like that.
Yeah,
too.
And she's having her do like insane things, get their passports, order their supplies, get her medication for her motion sickness. Although really it's Manjula, her virtual assistant, is serving another purpose, who's basically her therapist. Right. And so a lot of what you learn about Bernadette from her perspective is the emails that she's sending to Manjula, which are like pages long.
Which is also, I was annoyed because of the emails that she sent to Manjula. They were very detailed. He said, then I said, then this happened, and then like not the kind of thing that you would write.
But I could kind of understand that because she didn't have friends.
Right.
She didn't have anyone to talk to.
I agree. That's not even the way that I would write to my friend.
But the difference is that she got nothing back from Manjula to make her think. Manjula's responses were very brief, very business-like. Yes, I will take care of that for you, in response to like a 6-page request. So she wasn't trying to like build this relationship. But
I think she liked the fact that Manjula didn't judge. She was able to vent, and all she wanted
she was just sending it out to the universe, no judgment. She
just wanted someone to just listen and not try to fix it. She just needed a soundboard, and Manjula was that person.
Yeah. The random Indian comments really made me uncomfortable. Like, did you guys not feel uncomfortable? Like,
super uncomfortable. That's why I didn't like Bernadette.
Every single time she made some stupid Indian joke, I was like, really?
Yeah.
How is that appropriate? Like.
So meanwhile, she is giving Manjula the credit card information, their passport information, all the sensitive private details of her family's life. And it is revealed that Manjula is not a virtual assistant. It is a hacking scheme by the Russian mob. And now they have...
Which is randomly topical.
Right. And so, so the FBI has been intercepting the emails. And now someone from the Russian mob, Manjula,
is on
their way, having cashed in all of the frequent flyer miles. Meanwhile, Bernadette has decided that there's no way, she's agoraphobic, there's no way that she can make this trip. So she's come up with this ruse where she's going to have her wisdom teeth extracted the day before and then be so sick from that she can't go. Which eventually she changes her mind about, but...
Walk into an intervention where she's about to be...
Right. Yeah, by that point it's too late.
Also, did you guys think... And this is where LG. Do you think that LG understood what it means to commit someone, or do you think that he legit had it in for her? Like, there were times, because of the psychiatrist's responses, the way that LG was talking, more than what LG was saying, the psychiatrist's responses to what LG was saying, she was like, why does he want to commit her? Like,
he's passive. He has a lot of anger.
They haven't gone through any of the steps. And then it's weird that all of a sudden he has all of this proof that he didn't have yesterday. And I was
I don't think he was thinking of it as being committed. I think he thought...
You think he didn't understand?
Yeah, I think he thought I've not been able to help her.
He did it out of anger.
I went back and forth on it because part of me was like,
he resentful. Let me just... So obviously he did have some resentment. Who wouldn't? But I think he was also just really scared because now she's doing these things. And as messed up as Sue Lynn was, she did represent a whole nother dynamic in a relationship where he was the focus instead of giving the focus to someone else. And I think he just was completely ill prepared for that sort of attention. And so when he talked to the therapist, I think in his mind, he thought, she's not going on this trip anyway. I'll take B, give her the trip that she deserves. And while we're gone, Bernadette can have some intensive therapy. And maybe by the time we get back, we can pick up and move forward. That's what I
So part of me thought that. But part of me also wasn't sure. And I think that it was intentionally left open because part of me was also, is he just trying to get rid of her?
No,
I don't think he was trying to get rid of her.
Bernadette is a crazy person and she needs to be committed.
No, I never felt that.
No. I don't think, I agree with you there. I think it's a hybrid between the two. I don't think he ever really felt he wanted to truly put her in the, long term. He did want her to get help. What he wanted was the old Bernadette back.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
But the thing about it is he went about it the wrong way. Instead of trying to face it with Bernadette and communicate with her, he felt he knew what was best for her, and he was not doing what was best for her. It's what was for himself, and I thought that was selfish of LG. Instead of trying to do something together, which is what the counselor advises.
Trying to get him to do,
to do is for both of them to be able to talk together and then reconcile, because obviously I think there were issues that needed to be resolved between the two of them before going through this next step. Yeah,
I think, like I said, I got the feeling that LG was autistic in some degree, and I think he was not equipped to deal with Bernadette's issues, and so he used work as an escape.
To be honest, I wouldn't be equipped to deal with Bernadette's issues.
Well, exactly, but he did love her, and then I think relationship between him and his admin, as they kept referring to her, also was very unrealistic. Who behaves like that? But he was also extremely manipulated by her. And
for sure she was manipulative.
And because he was in the state of inertia where he knew things were messed up, he didn't know how to fix them, and here's someone telling him, and he was very susceptible to that. I was more sympathetic to LG than I was to Bernadette, but LG was a very weak man, and so I don't have a lot of respect for him. And I certainly, don't think he's this wonderful person. But
any of the men in this story were represented very well. Like I didn't like any of the men.
The Blackberry Bush dude was cool. Tom. Yeah, I liked him.
Not really. He was kind of a pushover. He was like, sure, I'll do it. It's going to tear it down. He knew what was going to happen, Tom. He knew. He didn't give a shit. He was like, fuck this bitch. Her Blackberry nonsense. He was over it. She was like, let's sneak into my neighbor's yard. He's like, I'm not comfortable with that. But he did it anyway.
One big piece that we haven't really gotten into is Bernadette's relationship with Audrey, who is a neighbor and sort of the alpha gnat. Bernadette calls all of the parent moms at the school that her daughter attends gnats because they're annoying. The school is actively trying to recruit new students and sort of upgrade their image, and so they're going to have a new parents brunch, and they've hired this consultant named Ollie O to try to generate some buzz, and so they're going to have this brunch. And Audrey is, as Iris explained, one of those typical West Coast people that are consumed with appearances and prestige and status symbols. She's hosting this. She has this wonderful garden. She cooks. She does everything. There's some blackberry bushes from Bernadette's property that's encroaching into her yard. She wants them cleaned up. Bernadette is not too concerned about them, but knows, because she is an architect, that those pervasive blackberry bushes are what the root system is, what's sort of holding the hill that her house is on. And Audrey insists that the blackberry bushes be removed. They get removed. During the parents' brunch, there's a mudslide that destroys the house, and traumatizes the children.
The giant sign.
Oh yeah, and she put up a big billboard saying,
because she caught her on her property, so she was angry, and she put this big sign that says "Gnats keep out" or whatever, and then that came in through the window of the girl during the mudslide.
And then from this, and Audrey is like out to get Bernadette the whole time. Says, this was the part that I thought was super unrealistic. So she is trying to confront Bernadette in the car line at school. Bernadette probably willfully doesn't hear her and drives off. Well, and Audrey is so offended by that she reports that her foot was ran over.
So Bernadette did see her. It specifically indicated in the book that she saw her, but that the crossing guard was telling her to go, and so she just went, knowing that she was trying to clag her down, but she didn't want to talk to her.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that.
She did nothing.
She would not run over her foot.
Audrey goes to the hospital, insists on getting crutches, and you learn about this from a doctor's note. It's an insurance claim.
The school admin sent out an email.
But the part that just didn't make sense to me is the emergency room bill, which included the patient's private medical history. Your bill is never going to include clinical information like that. It never would. So, yeah, because it's like a bill, but it's going on about how patient insisted that she needed crutches and Vicodin even though nothing was wrong with her. They would never put that in your bill. That information would not have been available to me. So, moving along. All of this is coming to
another way that she tried to use that particular device.
Right. Audrey was a diabolical. Definitely I would never want to be friends with her. Although she kind of comes around.
At the end she worked through it. I think she finally gets arrested, right?
Right.
She's at the hotel.
Yeah.
She finally comes to terms with the fact that she's a hot mess.
Her son
tries to manage it, and at the end, which I think, and I know that we haven't talked about the movie yet, but I feel like we've been talking forever.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna wrap it up. So just to finish, so the book closes with, during the intervention that LG has had before they go on this cruise with B,
right,
possibly getting her committed, Bernadette sneaks out the window. She disappears. They find out that she went on the cruise. She disappears mid-cruise, and she's presumed dead. And then months later, LG and B take that same cruise, just hoping to get some sort of closure. They find out that she isn't dead. She got off at a research station where they were tearing down one of the research units, and she got reignited with creativity and wanted to be the one that designed that, which again I think is sort of messed up that in time she wasn't letting her family believe that she was dead.
Well, she said she sent a letter, and she did send a letter because B gets it at the end. It was in her locker the whole time.
Okay, so that was the book. Now, audiobook. I felt like I didn't enjoy the book. I gave the book maybe 3 stars.
I also liked the book the least of the 3 options.
I liked the book the most of the 3 options.
I liked the book the least because I saw the movie first. The audiobook was my first divulgence into the story, the different story, because they're not the same story. The movie and the book are not the same story.
No, they're not.
So I was like, oh, okay, so it's different. Part of the problem, though, is that once I'd read the audiobook, when I read the book after the audiobook, the characters still had the audiobook voices in my head. So part of me resented because the way that she did, especially like Sulin's voice, I didn't appreciate it.
Yeah, nothing in the book indicated that she would have had an accent.
Right. I didn't appreciate the voice. So hearing the voice when I was reading the book, because she was born and raised in Seattle. Yeah. Like they mention it many times that she's a Seattle-born admin.
Well, I think it was just narrator trying to do different voices.
I hate that.
And one voice. Well, and we've talked about that before when there are a lot of characters.
It's fine to do different voices, but you have to be careful about accents.
It made me uncomfortable. And
it made me uncomfortable. And so when I was reading the book, it also made me uncomfortable whenever I would hear it because I actually wanted her voice to sound differently than it did. Not just the accent, but the tone and the theme of her voice and the way that she talked. Because she sounded like somebody who was sucked into like an AA sort of situation where she was just enamored with this whole concept.
Oh, it was that victims against victimhood.
Like that was her whole life. Like that was her
12 steps. Yep. And she quoted it.
And I felt like it was almost mocked in the audiobook, which she would not have mocked it. It would have been everything to her.
I didn't so much feel that she was mocking it. I think it did sort of point out how people use different belief systems, be it religion or AA or as a weapon. They weaponize that.
Yeah, I didn't like the way that they did her. I felt like I didn't like the way they did Audrey either. And I thought Audrey had more depth than the audio person gave her.
Well, as soon as I saw that it was one narrator, I knew it was going to be problematic because two of the 3 stars I give the book is based off of the foundation of these, different letters and emails and messages that are in someone else's voice and showing more about them than about Bernadette. So you're learning about that character. There's no way to really do that with one voice.
So the thing too about the audiobook is that I didn't realize that they were faxes and emails. Like I saw each of the conversations as just conversations from that person was having. Like this person's now telling this part of the story.
Right.
Now this person's telling this part of the story, which I didn't get until I read the book, and then I was like, oh, these aren't legit people talking.
Yeah, without that visual cue that these are documents.
When I realized that these are people actually talking, then I was sort of annoyed by that. I was it felt like people talking.
It never should have been an audiobook. It would have been hard enough to convey that.
I think she did say fax from, but it's one of those
it was
things
the way
I check out because I'm like, okay, now it's this person talking. Okay, now it's this person talking. And I liked it, but I think that I really liked the movie version better because I didn't hate everyone like I did in the book. I hated it. There wasn't a single character aside from B. And B's friend, I like B's friend.
Kennedy.
That I liked in the book. I didn't like anyone else. I didn't like any of the characters. I didn't root for them. I didn't care what happened to them. B and Kennedy were the only ones I cared about. Whereas in the movie, I cared about them all. But I think it's because you guys didn't see the movie first.
Right.
You already had pre-assessed.
I would say this. With the book, one of the things that I think that it got right was the description of Bernadette's art.
Yes.
I mean, you really believed she was a genius. The way that they described these houses and her inspiration for them and how she did it. Yes, she unequivocally, she was a genius. And I think the movie did a great job with the buildings. The ramshackle house perfectly captured the conditions they were living in. The beautiful glass house, the button factory. I mean, all of that, I think they did a great job. So I loved seeing that on screen. But I knew right away that I was gonna hate the movie because there was no suspense. The whole title is Where'd You Go Bernadette, which on a deeper level is like mentally, like where did you go? You were this rising star now. But in the book, there's a huge swath of the book where you don't know what happened to her.
Yeah.
You knew the whole time in the movie. You never feared for her life. You never thought she was dead.
Oh, that's true. That is true. Was never afraid for her.
So in the book, it also described Bernadette's background in terms of her childhood upbringing. She lived in a world. She never really lived in this world, the real world. She had her own imagining of the world. And so it was her learning what the real world was like. And this, when she went to Alaska, that was her first grounding point.
That chapter where Bea talks about the
Alaska,
choir,
sorry, the North.
I thought that was self-indulgent.
Which
that whole chapter where Bea is like at the church choir and they're like singing and she's I was like, what does this have to do with anything?
Right.
I don't have any new insight into Bea. I don't have any new information. This is just self-indulgent. I want to talk about what this choir was.
Right.
Well, I think that was trying to show that, and I think throughout the book that Bea also had a creative side. Actually, her creative side
was music.
Right. Yeah. And so she saw the beauty in anything. It didn't matter whether, even if it was religious.
Okay.
So
I just felt like I was like, really? Like, how much more of this is there going to be?
The problem with the whole book is and the movie was that it wasn't well written. But the other scene that did not make sense to me is in the book and in the movie, this huge deal is made because Bernadette, knowing that she is agoraphobic plus motion sickness, she gets Manjula to get her a prescription for like this crazy Haldol prescription that can only be filled in person at this compound pharmacy. And so she goes there and they talk her out of it because of the risks of the side effect, although later we find out that she would have been fine. In any case, she falls asleep on the couch. LG, Sulin, and somebody else from their office are walking by and see her, and that's the event that makes LG think, I did not think it was that big of a deal. Well, she fell asleep on a couch.
She fell asleep on the couch, and she was wearing like a weird...
fishing vest.
Fishing vest. And
well, it did make a point that she always liked to be well dressed and well put together. So maybe her in a fishing, but I still don't think that would have been like, this woman's insane. She's in a fishing vest and fell asleep in a public place.
She was trying to get a prescription, not for a Haldol or something.
Right.
And he was like, why is she getting a prescription for that? That's, what is that medicine you will use for? Like, I think there was more to it.
I think what happens is LG wasn't so different in that sense. So he was very much image-based himself, and he had this ideal of Bernadette, and I think slowly inside of him it was crumbling his view. He knew that Bernadette was almost out of his reach by now, and then I think without realizing it, that image of her in the couch, the way she was, he saw that this is not the person I knew, and he knew he was to blame. Part of it, and that broke.
I could see that.
It broke him.
Like she'd abandoned him in her illness because he had no idea up until that moment that there was anything wrong. Like, and I think that feeds into when he finds out about the letter that she wrote to her.
And that
he was like, she's going through all these things and she won't share them with me. She's shutting me out. I think that's part of it.
Oh, like, he was upset.
He sees her. She's talking about how she's getting a prescription for some crazy ass drug. She's asleep, and all of these things are happening to her, and she's not shared any of it.
Right. One of the other things the movie did well was, and Bernadette's played by Cate Blanchett, and
it was amazing.
I think she did a great job.
She did a great job, but so when she was sort of doing the voice to text, it made sense because when I was reading in the book all of her emails to Manjula, I'm like, who talks to the? I mean, I get that it was sort of her one like outlet where she, like you said, could just send it out into the universe, but it still seemed really lengthy to be typing all of that. So to hear her do it as a voice to text, where it was more of a stream of consciousness, she's just talking, it made way more sense.
That's not what it said in the book.
Right.
The book doesn't indicate that that's what happened.
Exactly. So I didn't put that was not put into my head until the movie, and then I was like, oh, I like that better. So that's the one thing. And the architecture are the two things that I felt like the movie added to.
Also, I felt like the whole that it's cold in Antarctica did not come across in the film at all.
By the time I got to the Antarctica, it seemed more like a Wes Anderson film. It seemed very surreal, not even meant to be realistic. Whereas it was just so hard.
And that's why I said that the book, to me, when I read it, was like a Wes Anderson world. It was not meant to be. I mean, the book is fictional, and she I think it was the sarcasm in there in describing people, and I think very much I wouldn't be surprised if she loved to hear our reaction, because I think this is the type of reaction she wanted to elicit by writing this book the way she did. It was it was mocking people because we are so judgmental of others. We really truly are.
Yeah, I get her intent. I just don't think she did it very well.
I mean, I just don't like it because I don't like to judge.
Right.
She did get all of my money though because I purchased.
But so to set up the movie, right? So going into the movie, I was already sort of wondering, how are they going to do this? This is a book that was basically just a collection of documents. And what I thought they were going to do, and I still kind of wish that they had done, was, kind of have it as B going through this dossier. And then
going flashbacks.
And then as she starts getting into the document, then it would flash back to where you could see it.
Really, because it didn't feel like B's story in the movie.
Exactly.
The movie felt like
it was Bernadette's story.
It was Bernadette's story. It didn't feel like B's story, which I feel like the book was. Story.
I felt like the movie was a vehicle for Cate Blanchett. They got her on, and then they built the movie to showcase her acting, which is great, but it was a little, we use self-indulgent. I feel like it was a little self-indulgent.
And then they really, really softened the edges of LG. Like he was sort of like a non-character character.
In the movie, I was not sympathetic toward him at all. In the movie, I thought he was a dick.
And he didn't even have an affair in the movie.
Right. Or he sort of did, but it didn't show that she got pregnant.
He had two types of affairs. Emotional affair was the first one.
Yeah.
Which he would not admit to himself. And then for one moment, it turned into a physical affair, which ended up with a child.
Right. That was all left out of the movie. Although you can infer in the movie that something's going on between them.
Maybe. But you're not sure.
But they don't spell it out. I also felt like they really softened Audrey's character. I didn't think Kristen Wiig was a great choice for that, although I love her as an actor.
She had a huge redemption arc in the film.
No, I think
the redemption arc was much more subtle in the book.
More subtle in the book.
When it comes to as a character actor, she's amazing.
Maybe that's what it is. It's not so much that it was miscast as much as the screenplay did not do the character justice.
Right.
It softened her up too much. She was crazy, and Kristen Wiig probably could have went there. She probably could have went.
Also, Kristen Wiig's husband wasn't in it in the movie, was he? Did we meet the husband?
But in the book, he's just mentioned. He never has dialogue or anything.
He doesn't have dialogue.
He was kind of you just know he's a alcoholic attorney general or something. So I mean, I get that for a movie you have to condense, and he wasn't. But Kyle, her son Kyle was
the reason she was the way she was. Like it felt like her family mattered.
It was more about Bernadette, and I think that's where they went wrong, because saving grace of the book is that through these documents you're learning more about the character that wrote them than you are about Bernadette, because they're all from these flawed perspectives.
Right.
And so it's revealing more about the author than it is about the person that they're writing about. And the movie doesn't capture that at all.
And then the relationship between Sulin and Audrey, so complicated.
Very complicated.
And at one point I was like, oh, they're not friends anymore. And then I'm like, oh, I guess they are.
I guess they can survive that, which was kind of a beautiful thing,
that
I hated the movie. I hated it.
Yeah, I like the movie the best, and then the audiobook.
All right, so let's kind of come full circle here. How much of that is because you saw the movie first?
I think most of it is because I saw the movie. Because I saw the movie first, I didn't have any preconceived notions about who the characters were. I didn't have any idea what was going on with them. I don't know. And so all of the information I'm getting is what they're telling me in the film, which is what I prefer. And this is why I prefer it. Always, if I can, see the movie first and then read the book. And here's why. If you read the book first and then you watch the movie, inevitably the movie is going to let you down. The movie is going to miss huge chunks. It's going to leave out characters that you care about. It's going to leave out information that you care about. You're going to be the whole time pissed off that they forgot this important thing. Whereas, if you see the movie first and you have a basic plot line of the film, and for me, I have a sort of understanding of what the characters look like and who they are, and then when I read the book, now I'm getting all the juicy bits and all the details, and I'm discovering new things about these characters that I've already imagined and loved from the movie, and it's all a joy for me. Every discovery is new and fun and exciting. Whereas if I do it the other way around, I'm constantly irritated. Movie first.
I disagree.
Okay.
Because if you see the book, your mind is already, it's like imprinting with like the baby ducks and the mama duck. Right. You're never going to be able to get those characters separated from the actors that played them, for better or worse. And so however you would have given birth to that character in your mind, well, you'll never know. You'll never know.
I think that I don't ever actually visualize characters in my head. either. So
but you can hear them.
I can hear them, and the audiobook, it did that for me. Like I had trouble with the actual book because of the voices in the audiobook. I did not hear the voices from the movie when I was reading the book. I heard the voices from the audiobook. And I don't know why that is, but I think that because of the way that my mind works, where I don't actually like see the characters, I don't visualize what's happening in the same way that probably you do, that it doesn't have that impact on me.
I also disagree that you will never think a movie is as good as the book. I think it's usually true.
Wizard of Oz is a perfect example of why the movie is better than the book.
Lord of the Rings. Yes, they had to cut out huge parts of it, but it's still a phenomenal movie that respected the books and did a great job. So it can be done.
Yeah, I mean, it has been done. But I'm saying in those cases, when you read the book, you're just still getting more information. Because there's no way the movie can have all of the information that the book has.
Right, but if the movie
is crap,
is miscast, that's it. It's going to ruin it.
Well, I mean, cinema is my preferred venue, so I do put a lot more faith in it, I think.
So as an experiment, do you think it was successful? Do you think that it made you appreciate why you preferred movie to the book?
Yes, and I actually think that this was a really good book to use as this experiment, only because the audio version and the written reading it myself were so different. I think most books wouldn't feel that way, but because of the nature of the way the book was collected, how it was faxes and emails, visually you had to be able to see that to understand that bit of it. I think that in itself was a good reason to use this particular story as the experimental one.
Right. I think too, because none of us really would recommend.
No. Did you like the book?
I love the book.
Oh.
The reason being, it's like I love Wes Anderson.
I love Wes Anderson too, and I would never compare.
I wished he was the one who directed this.
The writing was not near good enough. It was a terribly written book.
I think it's just a different way of writing. That's
I give her props for that. It just wasn't. There were so many inconsistencies. They made this whole thing about how when Bernadette first moved to Seattle, all of the Nats tried Googling her, Bernadette Branch, and her professional name was Bernadette Fox, and so nothing came up. They couldn't find out anything about her, which just added fuel to this resentment they had because they couldn't learn. She wouldn't share anything, but they weren't learning anything. But then for the rest of the book, they call her Bernadette Fox. So they did know her full name.
I thought that it said that there was only some vague mention of some architect named Bernadette Fox on the internet. It was like one, as much as they've claimed her to be a genius, she actually only did 2 things. She only built 2 houses. She only really had 2 things. It's not like she had a wealth of information on her.
So
and one of those things was destroyed.
Right. So the one thing is there really wasn't much. It wasn't until after one of the peers, I forget his name, decided to write an article because they're redoing.
They made like a TV show or something.
Yeah, they were redoing the concept of the green.
The 20-mile house.
The 20-mile house. So then they did this whole expose on
but when she first moved there, it made a point to mention that they Googled Bernadette Branch, which is LG's last name, and they couldn't find anything on her.
Right.
But then
it was somebody else that Googled it, because I remember them saying something about how she was going to build a tree house and nobody bid on it.
Right.
Which kind of made me a little sad. I'm like, oh, she tried.
There were definitely parts that if she hadn't been such a snobby person, I would have felt sorry for her.
There's on top of that too. There's I mean, that her way of coming through may have been snobbiness, but I think it's just, like you said, you give LG grace for being autistic. I feel that Bernadette truly is more than LG in that spectrum. She
was depressed.
I think it was more than that. I think she was autistic and then led to her depression. I think she didn't know how to deal with people because... All right, so as an artist, I love programming. I'm programming. I mean, that's why a lot of people who I date get really upset when I don't communicate much during the day. I get really engrossed and I love what I built. Mm-hmm. And it's heartbreaking when some of my hard work that I spent hours and hours on, and that's small compared to what she did. She spent years building that house. It was her vision. She put her all into it. And when just some of my applications don't make it to production, I feel sad. It's like, what am I doing? Why am I putting all my time, my life? I'm wasting my time doing. There is slight, but then you get out and you get through it. But for her, she truly is artistic, and her world is creating. And just like the description of the guys is that she can't be who she is without creating. There are people like that in this world.
Right, but she was creating it, and it doesn't explain why she was so antagonistic to her neighbor. You know, having the car towed, going through his dumpster when he'd already said, which he should have just let her have it. He was throwing it out anyway, I get, but she acted like a 12-year-old, just like having the billboard put up. She was a very immature person. As an adult, when you behave that way, there's consequences, and you are responsible for them.
Right. Bernadette had a way of looking at life, looking at the world. So her going through something that was throwing out, she says, that's a waste.
But she also chased down the truck. She knew that what she was doing was going to piss the neighbor off, and she could give a shit.
I don't know.
She intentionally antagonized him. I get that. I don't like waste either. But just like you said, in your work, when something that you've worked on doesn't go through, you don't pout about it. You don't throw a tantrum.
I don't throw a tantrum, but
you
I do
behave
pout.
Professionally and like an adult.
Yelling at your spouse like fucking hey, then literally going through the dumpster behind someone's back.
But even more than that, having his cars towed.
Well, I think what he did was wrong.
Nobody's standing up for that motherfucker.
Was right.
No, yeah. I think I would have. I'm sorry, but I would have had his cars towed too. How dare you park in my lot? They're getting without talking to me. I would have had tow trucks out there. Get rid of them.
Well, I would not have. All right. So final thoughts. So Michelle, you've said you've always preferred to see the movie first. You've done all three now. You remain unchanged.
I remain unchanged.
I also remain unchanged, unless it's something that I don't care about and I'm just seeing the movie because somebody else wants to see it and I don't want to read it. But if there's even the slightest chance that I'm going to want to read the book, I will not see the movie until
on this one. The audiobook did impact me. Like you said, it's just the voices.
It never should. This one never should have
just been B's voice.
There was a narrator problem
for me. It shouldn't have been an audiobook because it completely destroyed the mechanics of the book. But if they insisted, it should have been a cast recording so that you really could have heard the different people and it would have been very clear when it switched points of view.
Well, and also she tried to do voices for the characters, which were terrible.
And in the prologue, we talked about how when you have an unreliable narrator who has more information than you have, and the narrator of the audiobook knows the ending, how can they stay true to that and keep the suspense when they already know? And I
don't think he was unreliable.
No, I'm talking about like with Manjula, right? The narrator of the audiobook knows that she's an imposter, so why did she give her an Indian accent?
Well, she shouldn't have been doing Indian accents to begin with.
And I think that's why in the movie they intentionally never showed Manjula or any of the correspondence from Manjula.
Because I was surprised by that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think that it's because she's not really Indian. It was sort of unreliable.
There was no way to show that except for in a written book.
I don't like it when narrators do
fake accents.
Cultures. I don't like it. It just makes me feel. In fact, the whole book, there was a lot of time where I was uncomfortable the way that she referred to people by their race instead of other things.
Like what?
She made these like jokes about Indian things. Later, she talks about the Australian people. She just takes generalizations of cultures, and it was usually from Bernadette's perspective. And I wondered if she didn't maybe want me to think that she was kind of a racist.
Yeah.
But it made me uncomfortable. Regard.
She's just a really negative person. Everything is negative. And I don't blame LG. All she did was rant all the time. Who wants to hear that every day about the 5-way stops? Okay, yeah, I get it. We move here. It makes sense to have a conversation about it one time.
She did it when she was in California too. They talk about.
No, actually, no. That was a key from the author. That was her way to tell LG that she did not like being here. Her constant telling him that was a way to.
But it was her idea to go there.
It was her idea.
It was initially because she wanted to please LG. At this point,
no, she wanted to escape.
Oh, that's true. She wanted to do both. She did admit that too.
Would you next time, let's say we were to do this again, would you want to do the same order, or do you think that there'd be a better way to do it?
I can't see the movie first. I don't know which of the two, audio or reading first. That's where I'm at with that, especially with this book. I just think it just showed you we're all human. I mean, we all make mistakes in life. I know I made my multiple of fuck ups and things that I'm totally embarrassed about that people would say, how could you? And I've done my share of those, but it's just, that's part of life. I mean, that's one of the people ask why are we here? And it's to learn and grow and learn from our mistakes.
But she never did.
She did.
All philosophical.
She did.
She's abandoning her family so that she can do what she wants.
Well, she talks about when she gets back how she's going to make changes.
Yeah, well, I think it's.
I won't read the sequel.
Okay, so let me put it this way. I think what was not told there is that would have been better for her to have gone to this institution to get better, and it probably would have been the same amount of time in that institution, or is it better that she took this time period because she needed? So one of the biggest things is you have to find yourself and know to like yourself before you can love others. Okay, that's one of the key things in life. Okay,
sure.
All right, and so she needed to reground herself. So one way to reground herself is either go to the institution or do this project. And I think the better course of the action was to do this project. She had to be, sometimes in life, you have to be a little bit of selfish to be able to give.
I mean, I think that we can just agree to disagree.
Yes, I agree.
With regard to Bernadette, because Iris is very passionate about her feelings.
Well, I don't disagree with what Iris is saying, except that underlying all of that, Bernadette is not a kind or nice person. All right. Well, I think that wraps up our final season 1 episode of the Book Eaters podcast. If you're still listening, we appreciate you so much. We are really proud of the work that we've done. None of us had any experience with recording or, speaking for entertainment. Well, Michelle had done improv and some voice acting, right?
Well, I just sketch comedy now.
It's been super fun, and I'm glad that we did it all together. I'm glad that we put it out into the world. I think right now we're just launching the episodes.
Yeah.
There's 6 of them. We hope you'll listen to all of them. Be participating on our social media platforms. Give us feedback so that if there is a season 2, we can make the tweaks that we need to and make it a better podcast. So with that, we are signing off for season 1.
What's our sign off?
Eat the books, motherfucker.